welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Mike.
And have we got a surprise for you? Sarah is currently on a secret mission somewhere. I know what she's doing, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to tell you. So she's not here this week. So what we thought we would do is we will give you lovely listeners a taste of what you can get on the Patreon by giving you an extended episode of The Other 8, which is why the lovely Mike, or Michael as I may end up calling him.
Yeah, full government name sometimes. I don't really know why.
Is that your full government name? Are you Michael?
I am Michael, yes. I won't dox myself by giving you my full name, but legally I am Michael. But for these purposes, I'll stick with Mike.
Yes, so for this one, so we're going to give you an episode of The Other 8, which we do on our Patreon, which is where we focus on the teams that are not in your typical top 4. So we are going to be talking about relegation specifically this week, and who could possibly come up from the championship, and who we fancy, who we think that would do well in the WSL, who would maybe struggle. Plus, there's an extended episode of Around the World, because we will be talking about both the Asia Cup and the fact that there's been some controversy over the AFCON. And finally, a controversial talking point about whether or not the summer season should come back for the WSL. So it will be an action-packed episode. You won't miss Sarah at all, I promise you.
Big shoes to fill.
You do have some very big shoes to fill. We do love, and we do miss Sarah, but like I said, she's on a super secret mission, which I know what she's doing, but I'm not sure I can tell you. And we hope that goes well. But for now, and we do have wonderful that's it. You're a triple threat now, Mike, because you are a producer, editor, and now presenter on the main show.
Exactly. I've achieved the dream of every podcast editor, which is to get to talk.
To get to talk. Shall we start off with the WSL and the relegation battle, because we are 16 games in at the moment. We've got a bit of a clearer picture of who could be relegated, who's in that battle, and who is not. I will actually say the Arsenal-Brighton game has been rearranged, and I know not everybody's happy. Are you aware of this, Michael?
I'm not aware of this. Fill me in. This is my team. I should be aware, but I'm not.
Yeah. So, okay, this is how ridiculous it is. Your fixture will be played on May the 6th at 7:45. So that is a Wednesday.
Is that the Wednesday before the end of the season?
Yes,
when's the last game of the season?
Pretty much.
The WSL has been better this year with fixture cancellations. I feel like we didn't get as many frozen pitches as we normally do. That's probably because they're playing more games on like the main club stadium. So there's not been. I know sometimes we get to this point of the season and there's like 5 missing games that we've got to slot in somewhere.
Yeah, and I will say that. And we can actually talk about that with the other 8, because there is only one club that hasn't played at the main stadium. Can you guess which club it is?
Is it West Ham?
It is West Ham, and the fight keeps on going, but between the city council and West Ham unwilling to pay the megabucks it would cost to add an extra game, I don't think we're getting one this season, and it will be interesting to see if we get one next season.
Yes. Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it?
It is. It's one of those things. Is this what happens when you don't own your own stadium? But apparently it would cost over 200,000 to put on an extra game, and I'll be honest, West Ham's attendances don't warrant that.
No, for sure. I mean, you could be really cheeky and play one at the Den, maybe, but...
Imagine, I think that would go down less well than London City playing.
It seems to be a free-for-all these days, so anyone who wants to play at the Den seems to be welcome.
Apparently so. Millwall need the money.
But, I mean, we talk about next season. Should we talk... So, obviously, normally we cover the whole other 8 from... I was going to say from bottom to top, but from 5th to the bottom. But for this episode, we're kind of focusing mainly on the relegation side of things. So where are we going to draw the line? Are we saying that Aston Villa are safe? Are we saying from 10th down, or do you think there's more teams in play in the relegation area?
I would say, based on who's got to play who, even Everton in 8th isn't quite safe. They're getting there, but they're not quite there.
And would you extend that to Brighton up in 7th, or are you saying Everton's you cut off there? Because Everton and Brighton are level on points currently.
You are, but you have a game in hand. Granted, it's against Arsenal, but you do have a game in hand. Yeah, I just think based on the teams I've got to play, I think you guys might actually be all right. But I am including Everton in this, even though they are breaking away slightly.
That's fair. I think they're probably. I think Everton are probably safe. I would say Villa are safe as well. Not even so much that like none of the teams below them can overhaul them. I think any one of the teams below them could catch up. I just don't know if all 3 of West Ham, Liverpool, and Leicester can get enough points without taking points off each other to all climb over Aston Villa and Everton, if that makes sense.
That's fair. That is fair. Okay, then let's cut it off at my beloved West Ham. So let's do 10, 11, and 12. Those are the 3 teams that are in a relegation battle.
Yes. So, do you want to start by talking about West Ham? How are you rating West Ham season here?
It's not great, and it feels like it's always not great.
Yes, I guess that's my question. Within the standards of West Ham, and I'm being very mean here.
In the standards of West Ham, it's an average season because, and I don't mean that average is in like common. I mean average is in like normally we are 11th and trading places with 12th quite often. This season we did that for a little bit, but then we've seemed to have like managed to pull away a little bit. I think again we've done, which Sarah always calls us out for, and she's right too. We've done what we always do, which is we sign some top class people in January in the hope that will keep us out of relegation.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's worked for you previously. I mean, no one's come in and hit the ground running quite like the way Shakira Martinez did last season for you.
Yes.
That would be a tough ask, and even asking her to sustain that level throughout this season would have been unreasonable as a thing to request from any player realistically. But there's a lot of talent there. I don't think it's not for a lack of talent that West Ham find themselves in this position.
No, I always say it's because we're too short. And I will stand by that. We are, and this is a fact, we have the shortest team in the league. When we signed our last Norwegian, she broke the 5'5" barrier, and we all went, "What?" She's 5'7".
A giant.
Yeah, we got rid of our 2 tall players. We got rid of Dagny last season, and we got rid of the player we had on loan, our Hungarian from Tottenham. We have just a really short team, which means it is a struggle, which means set pieces are not fun.
No, and that's the kind of thing you really need to kind of maximise at this end of the WSL. You need to kind of take advantage of your set pieces, and you've got a good set piece delivery.
I was going to say, forgive me, Katie Zellum, for I took your name in vain, and I please forgive me for what I said, because yeah, Zellum's been phenomenal.
Yeah, and she's the exact sort of player you want in this kind of position, right? She's a genuine leader on the field. She's gonna make sure that they're giving their all to the end of every game. You got a few. Vivian Asay is probably also in that mold of a genuine like leader on the field, and I think that's really. I think West Ham is safe. I would be very
believe
surprised.
In my heart of hearts, I believe we are. I do think that we can pick up points where we need to pick up points, and we're okay. I just hope I'm not proved wrong, but I do think we're all right.
Yeah, I wouldn't say you can breathe easy. I think it might be right until the end of the season. But I do think West Ham will probably get enough to see them over the line.
So we talk about Liverpool, because Liverpool is interesting because it does feel very much like with West Ham. It's like if West Ham win a game, Liverpool win a game. If West Ham lose a game, Liverpool lose a game. We are very neck and neck at the moment. They again have signed some great players in January that does seem to be helping them kick on, but they also concede quite a chunk. Not as bad as West Ham and Leicester, but it's not great.
Yeah, no, not as bad as the teams around them, but I mean, we've seen them implement this kind of Gareth Taylor possession style of play that obviously we saw a lot from him at Man City for the last couple of seasons, where he had some of the best players in the league. We've seen what they can do this season, where they've run roughshod over the rest of the league, taking that style down a level to Liverpool without being too dismissive of Liverpool. It always had the risk of ending up looking like this, and they just don't seem to have enough. I mean, they're okay defensively. In attack, they don't seem to make the most of that.
No, they don't. Now they did sign well in the fact that Martha Thomas is on loan there, and she is a prolific goal scorer, but that's it. And Mia Enderby has found her shooting boots.
Yeah, and she's an excellent player, and they seem to fare better in these games where they're actually against the better teams, uh, where teams come and kind of press onto them and don't let them just kind of hold the ball in their own half and retreat into themselves. When they're actually pressed and they actually have to do something, they seem to come alive. But they seem to fare worse in games where they should arguably do better, where they be given time on the ball, and they just don't seem to be able to handle it.
It's not great to be a Liverpool fan at the moment. So it's definitely been a rough one for them. And again, they've got quite a rough run coming up. Their next game is against relegation rivals Leicester City, which you would argue is a must-win for both. Both, like, a draw will do neither of them any favors.
Yeah, that's a genuine 6-pointer, isn't it?
That is a genuine 6-pointer on that one. And then after that, they play Brighton. They play Brighton at Brighton.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's always, although Liverpool have been our bogey team over the last couple. I say that most teams have been Brighton's bogey team over the last couple of seasons. This is very little consistency, but I'm not here to trash Brighton today. So I can be positive. As you say, the game at home to Leicester is super important. There's also a Merseyside derby coming up at Goodison. With how much Everton have struggled at Goodison, that's a huge opportunity for Liverpool there. And in fact, they've also got West Ham, haven't they, later on in the season? So they've maybe got one of the kinder run-ins.
Yes, I would say so. I think they probably do. I mean, they've still got to face some of the big four, but you never know with Liverpool.
Yeah, so they've got Man City and Arsenal as their last two games of the season. So they're going to want to have done their business by the start of May, really, and we'll kind of know where they're at, whether they've done enough at that point, really. Don't want to be going into those games needing big points, because that's asking for trouble.
And then finally is Leicester.
Poor Leicester.
Poor Leicester, because they've been dragged into this relegation battle. They have only played 15, not 16 games, but having watched them play against Manchester City, their game in hand is against Arsenal.
Yeah, as you say, having a game in hand at this point isn't super helpful for Leicester, because they don't win many games, right? It's not like you can look at it and go, oh, there's an opportunity for 3 points there. The chances are they're not going to get anything out of that Arsenal game, or they certainly can't. If they're relying on that, then they're going to be in trouble.
They are going to be in trouble. So yes, so like I said, their next game will be against relegation rivals Liverpool. They then have to play Aston Villa, which again could be interesting. Then they play Brighton. Everybody seems to be playing Brighton. We've already played you twice now, so I'm like, we don't play you. They play Brighton. Then they've got London City, and then it's that Arsenal, which is the game in hand, and then it's Chelsea, and then it's Everton. So it's a bit of a rough ride for Leicester.
Yeah, you want. I don't know what the. I mean, I'm sure there's a stat that you could break down to identify this. Whether you're better off being in Liverpool's position, where you've got sort of all three of your, or both, I guess, of your relegation rivals still to play. You can go into those games and you can win those games, and that'll probably see you set. Or if you're in this Leicester position where once they played the Liverpool game, they've got a run of games against mid-table opposition who maybe aren't as focused. A lot of those teams will have one eye on the FA Cup at this point. There's some big games going up in the FA Cup. Liverpool are also still in the FA Cup, so that's an extra fixture for them to kind of navigate. Whether you'd prefer to be playing against teams who've got a little less to play for, then they're maybe on the beach a little bit more.
Yep, I'm sure there is a study, but Leicester currently have the worst goal difference in the league. They are on -23. They have scored 8 goals and conceded 31 goals.
Yeah, and that's that's just not enough, is it? You need 8 goals over the course of a 16-game season. I think they've only played 15, but you need to be scoring more than one goal every other game to stay in this division. You'd hope, really. I don't wish any. I've got nothing against Leicester. I don't want them to get relegated.
No, I quite like Leicester, and it's quite an easy away game for me, for selfishly. But no, I quite like Leicester both as fans and as a team. Do you think, and this is what I've discussed with Sarah a lot, is because of the weird relegation rules that are happening for this season and this season only, that there are teams that are just banking on the fact they're going to beat the third place championship team?
Oh yeah, I think that's. I mean, we've seen that time and again in the WSL, haven't we, over the last couple of seasons, that there are teams you can pick out who have identified a season where they can kind of take it easy, not invest too heavily, and kind of go again the season after. I think Brighton did that 2 seasons ago with Bristol City in the league, where it was pretty clear they were going to go down. I think Spurs did that to a certain extent last season, when it was pretty clear that Crystal Palace were going to go down. And yeah, I've no doubt that Liverpool and West Ham to a certain extent, and Leicester to a certain extent, had that playbook. And then we've seen them all in January kind of pivot out of that strategy. I think in part because of how well the WSL2 teams performed against WSL opposition in the League Cup. And we saw a couple of times where WSL2 opposition came and gave the WSL teams a really kind of hard time of it. And I think it kind of spooked them a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, West Ham should have had a clean sweep in their game because on paper their hardest game was playing you guys in the League Cup, and we got decimated by Portsmouth, who aren't even in the conversation for finishing third. So, which says a lot about my team. But I think you're absolutely right, because I'm looking at these squads now that I do think they do genuinely believe that, oh well, of course we're going to beat the second division team.
Yeah, maybe we'll come on to talk about that more specifically once we've talked about the championship teams. We're going to use the words championship and WSL2 interchangeably throughout this episode. Is what we're realizing right now. But once we've,
I always say that I am such a ally for everybody, and I'm such a a woke person, if you want to use that team, but I will dead name certain things, and one of them is the championship. The other one is Twitter, but I will never ever call it WSL2.
clip that. That's the
That's
cold
the
open
social
right
media
there.
Yeah, that's the social media promo, is that I am woke, but I will dead name.
So shall we move on to talk about some of these WSL2 teams?
We should talk about the championship teams. Now I'm just being contrary. But we should absolutely talk about the championship team, because it's really fascinating to me with the championship, because you can never, for a little while with the championship, it was very much, oh well, the team that went down is going to be in and around, and probably they won't come back their first season, but they'll probably come back the next season. And the last couple of seasons, it's been a bit like tasty in the final because it's been very like, actually, no, it's it's actually a bit more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, kind of in the inverse of what we've just said about the WSL, in that teams have seen this playoff game where they're going to have to play the third place WSL2 side and gone, oh, we can kind of have a season off and take a little bit of a gap year and work ourselves out and come back stronger next year. In the division below, they've kind of very much seen that as a challenge of, this is a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to kind of get a jump on where you thought you would be with the 3 places up for grabs in the WSL next season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think we can say with certainty we know who's going to win the league. Unless something drastically bad happens, I think it's safe to say that Charlton will win the league.
Yeah, I mean, they've looked like a WSL team in waiting all season, haven't they, really? They've not lost at all in the league this season. Obviously, the statement win was the 10-0 in the FA Cup, which, I mean, is a rough one for, I think it was Swindon, who got through and got absolutely, I mean, literally decimated by Charlton. And yeah, they've looked fantastic all season, haven't they?
They've looked amazing. They were a bit hit or miss last season. They managed to have a quite a good run towards the end. They ended up third, and had a thing. So this season, you can really see that they've recruited well, solidified what they want to do, invested where they should, and like we said, it's very similar to what's happening in the WSL in the fact they are running away with the league with 16 games played. So, like I said, unless something disastrous happens, that's the team that's going to win the league.
Yeah, and they're still in the FA Cup as well. And they've got a home quarter final against Liverpool, which you wouldn't bet against them winning that game as well.
I was going to say, like, it's not like it's an Arsenal, it's not like it's a Manchester City. That is doable, and in fact, that should probably give a good indicator of what will happen if Liverpool end up in that bottom place on how they deal with such a strong championship team.
Yeah, and obviously Charlton are coming in with all the momentum in the world, whereas Liverpool are very much not in that position. So that should be a really interesting game.
Okay, and then this is where it gets interesting. This is where we want to talk about it because even the second place team that gets that second automatic promotion spot is not solidified.
No, not at all. So there's what, 5 points separating second and sixth?
Exactly. So it could be Birmingham City, who have one game in hand and are 1 point clear of third place, or it could be Crystal Palace, who are on 28 points. Bristol City are on 26 points, as are Newcastle, who also have a game in hand, and Southampton are on 24. It could be any of them.
It could be any of them. Obviously, Birmingham City ran London City. There's a lot of cities going on here, but Birmingham City ran London City very close last season. It went all the way down to the final day with the big game on telly with Michelle Kang on the pitch, and all the drama of that. So we've seen Birmingham City up at that end before, and obviously they were in the WSL a fair few seasons ago. Now, was that 4 or 5 seasons ago?
It's been a few. Now you've said it, because I'm trying to think, because they definitely played at St Andrews, because I'd been to St Andrews, which I was like, never again.
Yeah, so 2021 was the relegation season, 21, 22. And they'd been a regular WSL side before then. I mean, they've obviously, if you look at the names that have come through Birmingham City at various points, they're a pretty historic club on the women's side. And they've had new ownership come in since then. I think they're the Tom Brady team. I think they are,
They
aren't they?
are the Tom Brady team.
And I personally have a little bit of a soft spot for Birmingham City because they're kind of like a bright and light at this point in time. So Amy Merricks, who's the manager at Birmingham, was assistant at Brighton for a long time under Hope Powell, who is now the director of football at Birmingham City. There's a lot of Brighton crossover there, so they're they're a team that I have a little bit of a soft spot for.
I honestly thought you was about to say you had a soft spot for Tom Brady, and I'm like, Sarah will kill you.
I have no strong opinions on Tom Brady. I will say that. Not any strong opinions. But I'm happy to be swayed if anyone should tell me why I should care about Tom Brady.
I was like, Sarah will kill you. Crystal Palace for me is an interesting one because obviously we saw them. They did the infamous Championship bounce, which is you come up and then you go straight back down, because they hired Joe Potter as their manager, who was quite successful with Rangers. Never quite won the league with them, but won back-to-back Scottish Cups. In fact, and Rhiannon will correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 3 back-to-back Scottish Cups she won with them. She also won another, I want to say it's the Scottish version of the FA Cup.
So I believe she won 2 consecutive cup doubles, which I think is what you're thinking of.
There you go. And she's proving herself again to be such a good manager and has managed to keep Crystal Palace in contention. They've got 8 wins, 4 draws, 4 losses. And like I said, are only 1 point behind currently second place Birmingham, who they beat in the most recent tie. So yeah, and also I really liked the ground. For anybody who went to Crystal Palace away last season, they play at Sutton. And it was such a nice ground and such nice people, and I did feel bad because we battered them 7-1.
So that's why you liked it so much. But they've recruited well in January. They brought in Hayley Ladd from Everton, which we were surprised about that Everton let her go. But she's a really smart pickup for them at this point, a kind of a proper leader on the pitch. They've played the loan market quite well as well, so they look like they're in quite a strong position. And obviously, they would hope they won't need it, but Joe Potter's experience in cup competitions, if you've got one game on the line for your chance to appear in the WSL or not, you want a manager who's got experience winning high pressure finals, cup competitions, stuff like that. That can only stand you in good stead.
They've also got one of my favourite players, my very tall Belgian.
Oh, Justine van Havermaet.
They have Justine Havermaet.
She is one of our favourites. She's the patron saint of the Other 8 podcast. I think
she is. We loved her last season.
It would be a pleasure to have her back in
the WSL.
In what we'll have to call the other 10, I assume. We haven't crossed that bridge yet.
Yeah, be the other 10. But yeah, no, my favourite Belgian, very tall Belgian, plays for them. So yeah, it's another game of soft spots for teams. Speaking of stalwarts of the WSL, number 4 is Bristol City. Like I said, there's a lot of cities in.
Yeah, we should get more creative with it. It'd be nice to have Charlton up there as an athletic. That's we don't have one of those at the moment. So
we do not have one of those things. We're going to also have to train Sarah out of saying City when she means Manchester City.
I think we might struggle with that. It's probably not a battle worth fighting.
I keep trying to get her to do that, and also United. I'm like, no, Manchester United.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, Bristol City have been a proper yo-yo club over the last couple of years, haven't they?
Yeah, they very much. It sort of is very much. They get promoted, they fall back down. They get promoted, they fall back down. They have been very unlucky in terms of managers, and they don't seem to be able to keep the right ones. However, their current manager is Charlotte Healy, which is a name not many people know. However, she was with Manchester United. She was, I believe, Skinner's assistant, and then was offered this job to take over fully, which she agreed, and has done really well for them so far. Like I said, they're 8 wins, 2 draws, and 6 losses, which is why they are currently 4th. But that's not a bad old record for Bristol City, considering it got quite dire for them for a little while.
Yeah, and they had a real kind of drop off last season, didn't they? After the relegation, they weren't up at the top end last season, particularly uh, with London City and Birmingham City, where they kind of wanted to be. Uh, they recruited quite cannily in the summer and in January, so they brought in a lot of like WSL or former WSL talent that's kind of taken the step down. But I think they'd probably wanted to have kicked on a little bit more, but past Palace and Birmingham City, you'd have thought.
Yeah, yeah, that is the thing. Because let's have a look at who have they got. I always like to see who they've got coming up. So the next game they've got is against Portsmouth, who are currently propping up the table. Poor Portsmouth, but that's where we're at with them. Then they've got the league leaders Charlton, which will be an interesting game for them. And then next one of that, they've got Birmingham City. So they do have quite a tough run coming up for them. I will say that. So the next team we've got to talk about, this is probably for me one of the most interesting teams, is Newcastle United, because Newcastle were bought out very controversially. I believe it's Saudi owners. I know it's in the Middle East, and I believe it's Saudi. And they came in and they said, we're going to fully invest in our women's team, and we will be in the WSL in like 2 seasons. That was 4 seasons ago. So it didn't quite work out the way they wanted. I think they realised it was much harder.
Yeah, and this is beyond necessarily this conversation, but it seems like the general take on is that the Saudis have kind of fallen out of love with their football projects a little bit. They're not as invested in the men's side at Newcastle as we thought they were going to be. That they found that harder, and again on the women's side, I think they've kind of hit a similar problem. You'll feel like they'll have really, if they don't get promoted this season, they'll feel like that's a real kind of missed opportunity for them to kind of jump ahead in the queue to kind of take a bit of a shortcut to where they want to be, because they spent fairly big in the summer and in January, to be fair, in that area, but they weren't shy about splashing the money around.
I'm looking at it, I forgot half of these players. I'm on their website now, and I'll be honest. So, for example, Morgan Gaudreau, I think that's how you say her last name, who is an US women's national team player, won the World Cup in 2015, plays for Newcastle.
Yep, she sure does.
Because I always remember the WSL ones. Obviously, like Jordan Nobbs now plays for Newcastle, and like you said, Demi Stokes is their captain. Um, Hales is their Molly Pike, Freya Gregory, Deanna Cooper. Like, these are names that if you've been following the WSL for the last few years, are names you definitely know and are aware of. They seem to have finally got the balance right. I will say that for them, because it felt like when they first invested in this project and they made it their big mission, like I said, their statement was, we will be in the WSL in 2 seasons and we'll have Champions League in 3 seasons. Very Michelle Kang-esque, I have to say. They seem to have got lots of youth and older players, and there was no in between. So it didn't quite work.
Yeah, for sure. There was a little bit of Wikipedia hunting, wasn't there? Anyway, if you've got a blue name on Wikipedia, you're in at Newcastle.
It really was. I'm looking there. Go. Georgia Fox is there. Aoife Mannion's there. Like, they have a really good, solid squad now compared to where they were at a few seasons ago. Like I said, they've got the game in hand and are on 26. So, and I know a lot of my friends want Newcastle to get promoted because Newcastle is a fun away day.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's a good away day. Yeah, and you feel like Newcastle's time will come, even if it's not this season. They're gonna be there or thereabouts for the next couple of seasons. So whether the Saudis have cool on the kind of overall project, you'd think they still have the financial muscle to get over the line eventually, particularly as the league kind of continues to expand.
Absolutely. Shall we talk about probably the wild card of this promotion battle, which is Southampton?
Yeah, we can talk about Southampton for sure. They've been coming for a while, haven't they? I feel like we've been constantly or not constantly, every time sort of we delve into the lower reaches of the English pyramid for the last couple of years, Southampton were kind of the team to look out for as they kind of made their way up from the fourth tier to the third tier to the bottom end of the championship. Now they're kind of troubling the higher end of the championship. They seem kind of like a slow rolling force that is eventually going to get them to where they want to go.
Again, very similar to Newcastle, they've got a lot of names that you're looking at and you're like, okay, I know that name. So one that would be very familiar to yourself, Mike, which is Ellie Brazil.
Yes, former Brighton player.
Another former Brighton player in Chloe Peplow, Fran Stenson as goalkeeper, currently made 9 appearances for Southampton. So it's up there. So they are, for me, the wild card because, like you said, they've always been a team that you're like, you're gonna do something, you're gonna get there, and then not quite. And in fact, I think last season they very closely almost got relegated. They were 8th out of 11th last season. So this clearly, again, investment has gone in to them. They've actually got Blackburn Rovers' ex-manager. Mr. Simon Parker is currently their manager, which I don't know what that says because as regular listeners of the show will know that we've talked about Blackburn and what happened with them not putting in for their championship license and ending up getting relegated to tier 5, I believe it was.
Yeah, probably not his fault, but yeah, not an ideal situation. They're probably in kind of the inverse of Everton and Aston Villa in the WSL, where could they get enough points to overhaul any of the teams above them? Like, could they end up finishing higher than Birmingham City? Possibly. Can they get enough points to finish above all of those teams above them? Probably not, right?
Yeah, I would say they are, like I said, they are underdogs, are unlikely, but they are still in the mix. And we cannot count them out because you never know.
Yeah, and so I guess now we come to the big question of, do we believe that any of these teams can beat the bottom place side in the WSL?
Oof, this is interesting. So the only team I will be 100% honest with people, the only team I have watched in any detail is Newcastle. Because we drew them in the FA Cup, so I wanted to see what we were up against. And I will say they are a very attacking minded team. They are, but that leaves them open defensively. And I can say they're taking on a Leicester, they will go up front in order to get their goal, and Leicester will, Rach Williams will run at them, nick a ball, nick a goal, and then Leicester will shut up shop.
Yeah, positive. It's interesting that, so if the season were to end today, it would be Leicester City versus Crystal Palace in that game. Have they said where the game's going to be played?
Oh, that is a good question. Let's see if we can find this out.
Because that will probably make a difference. But interestingly, if it was that game, we have seen that game once already this season in the League Cup, where Crystal Palace absolutely thrashed Leicester. I think it was 3-0 in the end. That game also got a shout on this very podcast because that was the game with the Rusha Littlejohn WWE move.
Was that the game? Was that the game where Rusha?
So
still managed to get an Irish call up, but there we go.
Clearly, she's still there at Palace. So if that happens again, you'd think she's in their heads. But so that's clearly something that they've clearly got it in them. I wouldn't bet against a Birmingham City or a Crystal Palace being able to take on a Leicester City in that game. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
You nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
It's a big audition.
Sarah will be so proud.
And we're going to do a little extended around the world today because we want to talk about the Asia Cup briefly.
We do want to talk about the Asia Cup because it has all kicked off in a good way.
Yeah, so at time of the recording, we've only had the first 2 games, which was Australia took on the Philippines, and South Korea have taken on Iran, uh, and I watched kind of the extended highlights of the Australia game. It wasn't necessarily a thriller. Australia had 85% of the ball, so it was very much a low block from from the Philippines, and they executed it well. To be fair, they weren't outclassed at all by Australia. They've looked solid. They've worked really well on like recruiting through the US kind of college pathways. So there's a lot of like kind of young, exciting talent on that Philippines team. And Sam Kerr was back amongst the goals for the first time in maybe 100 years for Australia.
I was going to say, it feels like it was a very long time since Sam Kerr has been back with Australia, but here she be. I do want to call out Olivia McDaniel, who was the goalkeeper for the Philippines. She had a cracking, she's been cracking for them internationally, and it was pretty much down to her and her organising of her defence that kept the Filipinos within only 1-0. She made 18 saves.
Yeah, proper low block stuff. I mean, maybe get her in if you're in that championship playoff for at the bottom end of the WSL. She might be a good pickup there. Disappointed that Samko didn't do the backflip when she scored.
She'd probably injure herself again, which nobody wants.
Yes, I mean the big favourites are Japan are obviously the number one favourites. A lot of WSL talent in that Japan side from all across the WSL really. So they look pretty strong. Australia, as you mentioned, look good. There's a bit of a kind of budding rivalry there, and it'd be interesting to see how North Korea get on after kind of dominating age group categories in women's football for the last couple of years now. Be interesting to see if they can turn that into a continental tournament, senior tournament.
It will be fascinating because the main thing for me why that'll be fascinating is because they haven't played in a very long time in the senior teams. They haven't. But because they haven't played in a very long time, they've never lost their rankings because of the way the rankings work. It's to do with wins, losses, and so if you don't do anything, you don't move. So North Korea has been in the top 10 for like the last 5 years because they've not done anything. It's genuine. They've just not played in the rankings. And like I said, you get your rankings from your wins, your losses, and things like that. So it'll be interesting now they're actually playing to see how that's going to affect their rankings. And will they go up or go crash out of the top 10? They've actually got an interesting one because they're going to be playing China, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan in their groups. At the moment, South Korea is currently topping their group over Australia, Philippines, and Iran, but that's just basically goal difference at this point. Japan have got Vietnam, India, and Chinese Taipei. And so, yeah, and then it will all come together in. Wait, how does that work when there's only 3 groups?
Presumably, it's a third place team kind of thing as well.
That would make sense because I'm like, wait, what? Like, there's only 3 teams. But of course, this goes towards qualification for the 2027 Women's World Cup.
Yes, although I think this is the last time that'll be the case. I think they're going to a qualifier system like in Europe from after this tournament. It's also Olympic qualification as well. So lots to go on with this tournament, and we're keeping an eye out for it.
We will keep an eye. Like you said, there's lots of WSL talent over there. I know there's a lot of in Australia's team. I know for a fact West Ham's Kat Gorey's gone over. Obviously, half of the Arsenal squad, who seem to be Matildas, have gone over.
Yeah, and I think Everton lost something like 8 players.
Yeah, Everton did. Everton really did. Shall we talk about the other big tournament that's supposed to be happening, but isn't?
Yeah, so this is news to me. You've broken this news to me on the at the start of this podcast. So yeah, maybe you can fill me in with the African Cup of Nations.
All right, Craig David. Show my age there. Yes, so the AFCON was supposed to happen in Morocco, like their male counterpart did before Christmas, and it has been cancelled literally 2 weeks before it was due to start. The Moroccan Federation has said that it's not ready, it can't host it, it doesn't have the infrastructure anymore. that it's potentially cost. The request to postpone tournament came from the Federation of Moroccan Football, with concerns raised about preparations being completed in time.
Yeah, so there's not been an official statement from CAF yet, I believe,
No.
and they haven't confirmed any new dates. So this just sucks. This is another thing that's made me feel sad.
Ugh, we're not doing well with your sadness on this podcast. Apparently, South Africa offered to host. However, it seems that there's going to be more of a focus on rearranging the dates rather than changing location, because that would be a bit of a difference, because Morocco is at the very, very top and South Africa is, as the name may suggest, at the very, very bottom of the continent.
Yeah, and obviously you would think Morocco would be keen to kind of look as good as possible. They're obviously hosting the Men's World Cup in a couple of years' time, so like, and they've just hosted the Men's African Cup of Nations, so you would think it would reflect quite badly on them if they can't.
I was going to say, I'm not going to lie. I don't buy this argument of the fact they can't get it together. I don't. I personally think that it's very much they've decided, yeah, we've already done the men. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think they clearly got it together enough to host the men's one, right?
Exactly. And you'd think that most of the infrastructure is already there, because they've literally just hosted the men's tournament. Granted, there may be some issues with, I don't know, volunteering and staffing and things like that, but I'm like, I don't buy it.
No, for sure. It's a bad look, certainly, for women's football as a whole.
Shall we talk about the other story that's going on, which is about the possibility of bringing back the summer season?
Yeah, this one took me by surprise a little bit earlier in the week. So for anyone who didn't see, Susie Rack in The Guardian, who is maybe the kind of premier women's football journalist in the UK at the moment. Certainly, like, if you discount like the former Lionesses, she's probably the one who carries kind of the most weight. And so she posted an article in The Guardian earlier this week advocating for a return to the summer season certainly in the WSL, to not necessarily for the reason of aligning it with the NWSL, but that was one of kind of the stated benefits. And yeah, well, how do we feel about it?
So I read her article and I get her points. I do. So her points are in the fact that it would take the women's game out of the shadow of the men's, that we wouldn't be fighting for pitches and like times on like broadcasting times, and we've done it before. In fact, we did it for a very long time, and then we had to do that weird summer series, and then we went to a winter league. So I get it. I do. I think it's so dumb. I really do. Because the reason we went from a summer league to a winter league is because it was to keep us competitive with the rest of Europe, because that's what Europe does. I don't see the rest of Europe going into a summer league. And we then have the same issues that the NWSL has, which is there is a major tournament. We've got a World Cup, we've got a Euros. We then lose half of our players from the league to go play in these tournaments. Do you just stop the league? Because then does that not then cross over back over to the men's again?
So I think to give her the benefit of the doubt, I also I wonder what the kind of conversation around this was, because I mean, as I mentioned, that she's like one of the premier journalists in the industry at the moment, and so it doesn't feel like she's the kind of person to kind of just spring this kind of at random if that's not something that she's kind of heard elsewhere, people be starting to talk about, which would be interesting. Yeah, I just don't know. Like, surely you'd have to move the Women's World Cup and the Women's Euros and those kind of things. Either move them to being in the winter at the end of the what we'll call the NWSL window for the sake of argument. I just don't know if this mythical patch where the men's game isn't actually exists. It feels like a bit of a land of milk and honey that we're never actually going to arrive at, right? I mean, I had a little look. So this summer, for example, there wasn't a men's World Cup or a men's Euros, but there was a Club World Cup, and so I had a little look. I think there were 82 days between the end of the Premier League season and the start of the next one. Chelsea men's team managed to play 12 games in that window. So, like, the idea that there's this patch of the global calendar, of the world calendar, that men's football hasn't managed to reach, and kind of, if there's a spot for men's football to kind of get in there, they'll find it. So I just don't know if this fabled land where we can play all the women's games and the men's side of football will leave us alone. I just don't know if it exists.
I don't think it exists. And I suppose then the argument is supposed to be that, well, you might get more fans come across because if there's not clashes with the men's games, then they'll come to the women's games. But I genuinely don't think that'll happen. If I'm completely honest, I really don't.
No, and I think what we're trying to solve is the thing that's been the bane of our lives this season, which is these stupid 12 o'clock kickoff times, isn't it?
I hate them so much.
That's what we're trying to solve, because Sky and TNT in the UK have paid a lot of money for their men's football coverage, for their Premier League football coverage, and they don't want to have to dilute that coverage by also airing women's games at the same time. They want to say, oh, we've got all the adverts at the start of the season were Sky saying we've got 600 live games or something this season, some ridiculous number, which included the women's games. But they don't want to conflict with those. They've paid billions for their Premier League coverage. They don't want to conflict with that. So the women's games get shoved to noon on a Sunday, or last season it was 8 o'clock on a Sunday where you couldn't get the train home, or late on a Friday night, or they shoved around, when clearly the solution that we really need is for someone to stand up at one of these big clubs with a big men's club attached, or in the FA, or in the new, whatever they've actually called Newco, WPLL, whatever it is, and say, no, we're not going to take the scraps. We're a league of grown-ups, and you should treat us like that. And it doesn't necessarily feel like that's coming.
No. So yeah, so I am not in favour of a summer season. I do think that's stupid. I just think it takes us out of sync with the rest of Europe, which makes Champions League really complicated. And then, like I said, when you've got big international tournaments, it doesn't work.
But cool idea. Maybe I like that some people are having different ideas, and maybe more of those, but maybe not this one.
And that is it for us at this very special edition of The Other 8 on the Women's Soccer Show. If you liked what you heard, please go check out our Patreon, where we put up new episodes, and we do constantly talk about teams that are not the traditional top 4. But for now, as ever, I've been Allie.
And I've been Mike.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.